Okay, so today I wanted to go over how to do some of the questions from the meiosis quiz. So these are the first questions I wanted to talk about. Two questions. So if this cell here is in prophase 1 of meiosis, what is the diploid number of the cell? And then also how many DNA molecules is shown in this cell? So before we answer that, let's look at the mechanisms of meiosis again. So here's the mechanisms of meiosis. Remember, in meiosis 1, what's happening is that the two homologs, after they go through crossing over and everything in prophase, then the two homologs line up next to each other. So here you have two chromosomes next to each other. And that's going to yield, during anaphase 1, the separation of those two homologous chromosomes to opposite poles. So we're separating the homologs in meiosis 1, and we end up at the end of meiosis 1 with two cells, each with 3 chromosomes, whereas we started with cells that had 6 chromosomes. So we've gone from a diploid cell to a haploid cell. Then in meiosis 2, those chromosomes line up by themselves on the metaphase plate, and then the two sister chromatids, so the two exact copies of the DNA, then migrate to opposite poles, yielding the final cells, the 4 cells that are all haploid. Each of them has 3 chromosomes. So meiosis 1, we're separating the two homologs, and meiosis 2, we're separating the two sister chromatid. So back to this question, we're talking about prophase 1, where we have all the chromosomes that have been duplicated. They've gone through S phase, so each chromosome consists of 2 sister chromatids, and we're about to start this next phase, which would be metaphase 1. So if this cell is in prophase 1, all the chromosomes again consist of 2 sister chromatid, and so the diploid number is just going to be the total number of chromosomes in the cell. And in fact, you can always find the diploid number if you just count the total number of chromosomes in the cells that have the most chromosomes. That will be your diploid number. And so here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the diploid number is 6. The haploid number is half of that. It would be 3. And so you have 3 types of chromosomes, 3 big chromosomes, 2 big chromosomes, 2 medium-sized chromosomes, and 2 little chromosomes. So diploid of 6, haploid of 3. Again, for the second question, how many DNA molecules? So this cell is in prophase, so again, each chromosome still has the 2 exact copies of DNA, the 2 sister chromatid, and so each chromosome has 2 DNA molecules, so you have a total of 12 DNA molecules in this cell. So that's how you answer those first 2 questions. Let's go on to these questions, which I think we often find a little more challenging, but if we break it up, it's not so bad. So if it says that the diagram above are of dividing cells from one individual. So if it's one individual, we know that the diploid number and the haploid number are the same in all the cells of that individual. And so it's asking which diagram represents metaphase 2 of meiosis. But before we jump into that question, let's just analyze this figure. And this is a good way to approach these types of problems, is to go ahead and figure out what all these diagrams are, and then answering the other questions becomes easy. So the first thing that we want to figure out is which cells are mitosis and which cells are meiosis. So we know that the mitosis cells and the process of mitosis is always going to yield diploid cells. So here we're comparing mitosis and meiosis. And so here we start with 6 chromosomes. All those chromosomes line up by themselves on the metaphase plate, divide the sister chromatids, and so we end up with 2 cells, again with 6 chromosomes. We go from a diploid cell and produce 2 diploid daughter cells. Whereas in meiosis, in the first division of meiosis, we have the 2 homologs, and they line up next to each other on the metaphase plate. And then that's during metaphase 1. Then during anaphase 1, those 2 homologs go to opposite poles. And so the first division is separating the 2 homologous chromosomes, and you end up with 2 cells that each have only 3 chromosomes instead of the 6 that we started with. And then the second meiosis division is going to line up those chromosomes by themselves on the metaphase plate, and then it's going to yield daughter cells, again, with the 3 chromosomes when you separate those sister chromatids. So looking at this figure, we have to say, okay, which cell is the one that has the most chromosomes dividing and the most chromosomes lined up on the metaphase plate, or the most chromosomes separating the 2 cells during anaphase. And you can tell that these 2 cells are in mitosis because here we have all the chromosomes lined up on the middle, whereas in other figures there's only 3 chromosomes. Here there's 6 chromosomes. So this is going to be mitosis because you're going to end up with diploid cells. Once these sister chromatids separate, you'll get this. And so this is metaphase of mitosis. This would be anaphase of mitosis. 2 sister chromatids separate, and you'll end up with 2 cells, each with 6 chromosomes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we started with 6 chromosomes here. 1, 2, that little one's hard to see. 3, 4, 5, 6. So we know that those 2 cells are mitosis, and now all these other cells, again, are going to yield cells after division that have only 3 chromosomes. So we know all of these other ones are going to be meiosis. We also know that, again, this is metaphase because all the chromosomes are lined up, and this is anaphase once the 2 sister chromatids have been released and migrate to opposite sides. So the next is we know that meiosis yield haploid cells. So we said that all of these other cells will yield haploid cells. So if we look at these, when this divides, there'll be 3 chromosomes in the daughter cell, 3 chromosomes in the daughter cell. Here, when the sister chromatid divide, it'll be 3 and 3. Here in anaphase, you can see this is going to yield a cell with 3 chromosomes, this one with 3, 3 and 3, 3 and 3, 3 and 3. So all of these are going to yield cells that have only 3 chromosomes, so we know that's meiosis. The next question is, what stages are we talking about? And remember that in meiosis 1, we have the 2 homologs lined up next to each other in metaphase 1, and anaphase 1, we have homologs going to opposite poles. Whereas in metaphase 2, in the second division, we have a chromosome lined up by themselves, and it's the 2 sister chromatids that separate during anaphase 2. So keeping that in mind, looking at these figures, again, here we have a cell that has 2 chromosomes lined up next to each other. And so that's going to be during the first division where the 2 homologs are separated. And so this would be metaphase 1, and as those chromosomes start to migrate to opposite poles, that would be anaphase 1. And we see that instance here in panel G. So this would be anaphase 1, this would be metaphase 1. Then in meiosis 2, in metaphase, we have the chromosomes lined up by themselves. So this would be metaphase 2, and as those sister chromatids separate, you would then get this in anaphase 2. So here we have the 2 sister chromatids separating. So this is metaphase 2, this would be anaphase 2. Here's another cartoon that also shows metaphase 2, and another cartoon that also shows anaphase 2. So now we've defined all of these stages. These 2 are the first division in meiosis. These 4 are the second division in meiosis. And these 2, again, we had previously identified as being in mitosis. So now we have a complete picture of all the different cartoons. These 2 are mitosis. These are all meiosis. These 2 are the first meiotic division, and these 4 are the second meiotic division. So now it's an easy task to answer these questions. Which diagram represents metaphase 2 of meiosis? So again, metaphase 2, you expect chromosomes lined up by themselves, and you expect half the number of total chromosomes that you can see in the species. So we can see a max of 6 chromosomes. If we only have 3 lined up by themselves, we know that's metaphase 2. And so the answer would be F. It could also be C, but that's not a choice. Here, which represents metaphase of mitosis. So again, in mitosis, we expect all the chromosomes, the max number or the diploid number, all lined up on the plate by themselves. And we see that here in panel H. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 chromosomes lined up on the metaphase plate. We know that's mitosis. They're lined up. We know that's metaphase of mitosis. So H is the answer. Which represents anaphase 1 of meiosis. So again, we already talked about how this would be metaphase 1 of meiosis, the 2 homologs lined up next to each other. And so anaphase 1 would be separating those 2 homologs, and we see that occurring here in panel G. We have three of the homologs going this way, the other three homologs going this way. So G would be the answer there, which represents anaphase 2 of meiosis. So again, in meiosis 2, we're separating the two sister chromatids. So we start meiosis 2 with the three chromosomes lined up on the metaphase plate. In anaphase 2, we separate the sister chromatid. And so if these started to separate, we'd see an image like this in E, where the chromatids are separating. So E is anaphase 2 as well as D. And D is one of the choices here. Question number 5. Which cell is an anaphase of mitosis? So again, anaphase of mitosis is when the sister chromatids are separating from all the chromosomes lined up together. So here we have 6 chromosomes all lined up, and here is anaphase when the sister chromatids from all 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, are separating to the 2 daughter cells. So B is the correct answer for anaphase of mitosis. And then finally, what is the diploid number of this individual? And so to get the diploid number, you can just count the total number of chromosomes in mitotic cells. So here's a mitotic cell. We already identified that as the ones that have the most chromosomes lined up on the metaphase plate, or the most chromosomes separating during anaphase. And you just count the total number of chromosomes. And here in H, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can also count what you expect after this division. So after anaphase and telophase of mitosis, you expect 2 cells, each having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we know the diploid number is 6. The haploid number is 3, and you can see that in meiosis, you're going to end up with cells with 3 chromosomes, and those would be haploid cells. So that's what you expect from meiosis. So I hope this helps answer those questions. And again, if you have more questions, you can feel free to email me. Thanks.